Right. Thank you, and everyone, for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 161. And for all of those who get to listen to this information in the future, I hope you guys find it as valuable as I know I do. Every single day, I get to host these spaces and have the diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives and people and individuals who come in here and share their opinions and information on the topics that we speak about. But uh, thank you. Shout out to EG. You joined the space, I think, faster than I was able to even join it. So I'm glad to see you here. And Shellfish, McQuack, Fridge, Dazzling, welcome everyone. I'm going to get a video from Michael Levine, same video that I had posted uh, in the space last week in relation to the topic above today. And for anybody who's in the space, it's a great video. If you ever after the space want to go back and give it a watch, it's just more of a recent video from him updating a whole synopsis on his point of view from going from stages of wondering about cognitive structures beyond what we think about as consciousness in our relative to our ourselves and our actions being made as beings, and looking at other cognitive functional systems in much more discrete manners that are all kind of around us, and starting all the way down from xenobots, which are cells of a salamander, and I forgot the other lizard off the top of my head right now, which with just simple playing around with, very little actual bioengineering, are able to create this interesting effect where you could essentially separate the embryos of salamanders in this particular case, and the cells that would be what would be represented in the organic state of the salamander are in different anatomical manners represented, yet the same life taking hold of the embryo for the salamander grows a salamander, just like we would perceive to see a regular salamander today. So I think it's starting all the way from there and xenobots to now where we're at with anthrobots, which are able to be our own cells that are able to be reprogrammed and programmed in different ways using these these different methodologies that have been developed to do all of these different wonderful things. And you know then the question comes down to it in comparison to when we look at our organic selves and organic systems from a cognitive perspective. My question today, and for anybody's opinion, what if you do see any similarities in the way that synthetic mach- machines operating have, and if not, of course, then that be fine too, and why you think maybe that there can be similarities there. But yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and something over the next decade or so that is going to become much more on the forefront of science and technology, and hopefully just overall generalized critical knowledge from us, our societal standpoint, rather than just a few minds. But I think it's going to really start to become way more questionable as we enter this age of cognitive behavioral operating systems, and furthermore putting them into robotics, where there could be very very much those similarities to cybernetic being systems, possibly that could have really really a lot of similarities to how we think of ourselves today, just without being the exact same methodology of how we came to be about how we are. And so, yeah, that was a long-winded statement. Sorry, guys, but welcome everyone to the space. Wow, I really went on for about 10 minutes there. Um, Feel free, anybody though, if you guys want to jump in. Shellfish, you can go ahead and start us off, and I'm gonna go get that video.
Sure, sure. Jim, guys. Was it the oxalato that you were talking about as far as the other Muslims? Anyway, so similarities between synthetic and organic. I think we were discussing this in Asia's space the other day. In regards to hallucinations. and the necessity, the fact that we keep trying to train hallucinations out of the synthetic models is actually kind of a bad thing. That would be kind of like asking us not to dream. It's a time when we have a lot of compressing of files ourselves, or sorting data that is kind of like the noise that happens throughout the day. So I think that's probably one of the similarities that both neural networks for synthetic and organic go through. I don't know if that's a good place to start or not.
Well, it is interesting, and I think the reference to dreams being maybe like a resource allocation of therefore proving what would be true or false, right? If you think about a system of bits being yes or no, of course, we run on almost like a quantum flux kind of association with how we perceive reality. I think if you look at uh, I know there's been some talk like with the microgroup tubules and just the complexity of right our organic structure and molecular system of what's actually occurring compared to how we have microchips today. But nonetheless, I think what's important is when you think about a large language model. This is why I actually, and I that's funny because Crow has been using this term a lot lately too. Instead of coining it a language model, he likes to use the term cognitive model. And so I think the interesting thing is like for us, right? You realize, and hopefully for the most part, typically that you're about to act on an action in reflectiveness of your dream. And so you could say that is not consistent with the reasonable reality around you, and so I should not act upon that, which would be my dream. um, the one thing with hallucinations when you think of a large language model is it perceiving to, or how we would think of something that perceives us perceiving, is it cognitively aware, right? Is there an awareness spectrum that it is acting upon information that it has created, being its own synthetic information, which was a hallucination, and then like furthering its causal effect of actions based off of that? That could be dangerous. That's almost essentially you perceiving to live in the dream in our physical reality, which of course could be a danger of to those yourself and those around you, at least how we perceive reality to be. It would be a really interesting reality though if you could act upon your dreams and our collective space. I would very much so like to see what that would look like, but it's not how it at least I perceive it to be. Yeah, Shellfish Show could jump back in, and Dazzling, you got your hand up. Jump in after.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dazzling.
I did not have my hand up. However, seeing as I have a mic now, synthetic and organic. I mean, you kind of mentioned about bits then being, zeros or ones, yes and no, yin and yang, whatever. I don't see there being. I mean, you can simulate organic matter in the best way possible, but I feel like in the analog realm, there's an infinite amount of oscillations that will go around with atoms and other particles, whereas you can render the synthetic state as much as you want, right, with as much compute power as you want, but you'll always have it at a state of either that zero or a one. Um, so yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents for the moment.
You were a little low for me. It was hard to hear everything that you had said there. But Shellfish, you got your hand up. If you want to comment on it too, please feel free.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, so as a human, you're only able to take in so much, like with your visual spectrum, right? You have your normal range, what you're looking at, and then you have your peripheral view, which can be kind of noisy until you like actually look over there to whatever direction, whether it be something that draws your attention through your senses. Somebody throws a ball at you and it gets your attention. A noise. Uh, different senses are constantly being monitored, and when you go into the dream state, that is most likely a lot of the noise is being processed. So when you're getting these weird dreams of like a three-eyed monster, well, you're not looking maybe directly at that. It's like the noise that's in the peripheral. So it's processing all that. But the synthetic systems are able to have cameras pointing in all directions at all times. So um, I'm kind of confused on where their hallucinations are actually stemming from, because they would be able to monitor and take in all of those things. They wouldn't have the noise that we have, correct? Like where's their noise stemming from that's causing their hallucinations? I guess that's a better way of asking.
Well, referring to them, we're talking about a systematic set of mechanical processes in the form of electrical transfer, right, between semiconductors. And so there's a completely different complexity in comparing the operational way that the system is doing. However, the relativeness comes into the actions that are being done, right, and their representation of expression or manifestation to us in this physical realm, and how that is of importance. But it's a very, I think it's a far distance and difference between what we mentioned, like a hallucination between us, or a dream from a organic substance perspective of how we think of dreams, and maybe why we dream, and to a hallucination of a language model, for sure. And in the end of the day, right, to me, what's really important, though, less about what's occurring and more about, do you act upon your dreams in our physical reality? And of course, if you did that, like I said, that could be dangerous to you yourself and all those around you. And so think about a large language model. I think it's less important that it has this possible realm of hallucinations, which, you know it's interesting to think, because how would they have hallucinations, unless they were apparent to individuals who were interacting with them? Because, is there some sort of, and there could be like a back server room where they're able to create their own synthetic information and produce it in the same format of language, and then further build on top of that. That becomes extremely dangerous, though, if that synthetic information is based off of a hallucination that's completely wrong. I mean, think about, from like some advanced security system that has a hallucination that it should be reporting things that it should obvious that there's no reason for it to report. It could be detriment, in different types of ways, depending on how the system is set up. So yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to compare the two, but even when comparing the two, when I think about it from an operational perspective, that would be what would be important to me. As long as the the information, the knowledge is used in that capacity, as a saying, we can compare this to what is actually physically the reality of what is occurring, or what's the correct mathematical assimilation of reality, and what's not pertinent to it. It's always good having comparisons, but you don't want to act on the wrong end of that. And Shellfish, please go ahead, you got your hand back up, and then
Okay,
over to Harbinger. Welcome up, man.
this is kind of not scientific per se, but so you had people like Edgar Casey, who are known as the sleeping prophets, that supposedly were able to go into a sleeping state and diagnose people's ailments or see things into the future. What do you think you would say is going on with computers or AI that are able to go into the states that are doing predictive models? Do you think it's a similar technique, like it's tapping into that same subconscious, or a similar realm? Like I don't even uh I don't know, you had shared something about a computer model saying that there was an alien thing that was going to be coming up, but there's been people prophesizing for many years, and religions, and all these different cultures doing similar things. So who's to say that the AI that we've trained couldn't do the same thing that all these people have been doing for thousands of years?
Yeah, once again, I think things are relative when we think about information and spectrums of time. and the way that information is associated with photons and light itself. Um, it could be similarities when when you think about things that when I really won't talk about it too much today, but like esoteric side of the nature of reality in correlation to the actions that could be done in our physical reality actionably, and their similarities reflectively. But um, yeah, maybe a different subject, different day. We'll definitely touch on it again. Harbinger, welcome up, man. You got your hand up. Please feel free to jump in.
Awesome. These are some of my favorite spaces because they're so interesting. So I appreciate you for holding them. And, Shellfish, you're always having some great input in here. So I appreciate you too. You guys have really got me thinking. That's what I love about this. So, you're talking about, the hallucination. And it's kind of odd because we as humans, I mean, there's different types of hallucination. Dreaming is definitely one form of hallucination. Um, and the thing that's different about dreaming is that when we're not dreaming, we're aware that for the most part, most of the time, that was a dream. You know what I'm saying? So like when we wake up, we may have been fully involved and believed that that dream was reality when we were in it, but when we wake up, we realize for the most part that was a dream, and we kind of filter that out from our reality. You know what I'm saying? And but then on the other side, there's like schizophrenia, for example, where it's like a bad type of hallucination where they think these hallucinations are part of their reality. So that's where I'm trying to go with this AI stuff. Like, how will they filter a hallucination from actual reality? How would you keep them grounded? I mean, we come with that built in, but it's obviously not built into AI. So how could they know something that actually happened versus something they hallucinated?
Oh, so this is an interesting question, actually. So what it really, for the most part, is going to come down to is the ability to articulate, right, a forward progress in in resemblance to, and you could use like a term like a graph bag, but a multiplexity of where the information would be being sourced from. And so it's all about the relevancy of the data, and that forward progress of keeping that information um, 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 not just relevant in the conversation, but keeping the forward progress. Um, I'm trying to think of a word, but I lost it there. I'm sorry. In relation though to the past tense information, and so being able to essentially, just like how our brains would say, we have all of these different things that are occurring right now. I'm about to make an action. Don't make the action that you jumped off the bridge last night, right, in the dream, right? So we're not going to make that one, right? Maybe you're on an elevator or something like that, and you have some sort of correlation to, like, you had a dream that you jumped off of the building last night or something, right? Well, we want to make sure that essentially, right, and this is actually, I used the term earlier. Today we're calling them large language models. I think soon going forward, and Crow has been using this term lately. He's been using a cognitive behavioral model, because the ability to be aware of that particular state of information, how it was generated, and its relevance to the forward progress of the relevant information that's going to be produced is very important, of course. And so definitely something that is being worked on, important to be worked on to keep these agent models and their abilities to articulate expressions that are meaningful to us, so relevant. So yeah, it's definitely something being worked on though. EG, you're in the space though, man. You've worked on quite a lot of agents, and in particular, I think it would be interesting if we got your input here, of course, if you're able to speak on how the agents that you've built and the models that you've set up, how you've been able to, over time, keep that information relevant to what was important, and not to something that would be considered like a dream or a hallucination that we see in models sometimes.
Hey, Death Ranger, thanks for giving me the mic. I mean, I came here to listen because you guys are giants of this field, and the knowledge you drop is more important than my words. My experience has been very technical, as you know, very much with the models, considering them as programs of computer, and the only difference is that these are indeterministic, so obviously they have and again, like, my vocabulary is slightly different. I don't call hallucination, I call them drifting, because they drift from the path they are supposed to be. So that's my term for that, slightly less anthropomorphizing. And I use quite a robust technical network. So I use a mix of what is known as ML flow and DSpy to keep agents in check. So my agents are part of. So the development of agent takes place in a framework called AutoGen that comes from Microsoft, and then we bring that into a framework called Semantic Kernel. So that becomes a kind of a program, and then dspy is where the prompt handling takes place. So when we put a prompt to the agent, the agent itself is defined by dspy, and then we capture the tracing and everything into mlflow, so that if any change that takes place, we have either human in the loop, depending on the pipeline or the type of agent that we have, or we use something known as LLM as a judge. So we send the output and tracing and everything to a strong LLM like GPT-4 or Gemini or Claude, depending on the purpose, Sonnet or Haiku, and ask the question, very specific questions with forced structured output, to say that whether the intent of the prompt, the original prompt, and the response that we have got are matching or not. And if the matching is not there, then that is considered as a drifting or hallucination, so to say. And then what we do is we dspy takes over and carries out something known as uh, again anthropomorphizing, but something known as agent healing. So that heals the prompt. That means that it changes the prompt in such a way that the response become more deterministic, and it carries out this process in a loop till we get the desired output that we are looking for. Uh, Drifting were very much prevalent in the beginning phase. It has been quite stabilized for last few months, I would say. Two reasons. One is that we, by using this method and doing everything, the our agents have become so robust that they are not giving models any chance to drift. And at the same time, the models themselves have become much more robust in terms of structured output. And so if anybody is looking for a deterministic output, that means that if you ask the model similar kind of question, I'm not saying the same question, I'm saying similar kind of question, and you want the model to give you the similar response. Again, I'm using the word similar, not the same. So there's a difference between those two. Similar response. Then in that case, what happens is that you can actually enforce something known as structured output. And structured output means that you are forcing the model to give you an output in a desired format. Right now, the outputs that we are getting in ChatGPT and the likes is simple text output, but you can ask for a JSON structure. So even if the output is simple text, like you ask for, like, let's say, for example, explain to me this, but then you say, but explain that in this particular structure, and that could be just paragraph kind of JSON. It still gives you a very, very very robust similar output. So that means that there will not be any drifting. There is another side of it is where you want the model to drift. So let's say, for example, you're doing creative writing. So there you enforce a different pipeline where the agent is supposed to bring creative output. So there we again use a very similar. So they're like it's slightly different. So we use semantic matching. We use vector embeddings matching, and we also use sometimes LLM as a judge and say whether the output that we have received is similar output. If output is similar, then agent is supposed to change the output. So you have both those sides. So I hope I have answered your question, but it was very technical way of explaining. Sorry about that.
Oh, it was so excellent, EG, and that's why I record the spaces because, you know, Harbinger. If you need to go back and listen to that, I mean, I would because it was completely digestible in my opinion, but really broken down on every single technical level on the process of steps and coordinates. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you, EG, for being here because how perfect of a moment was that? Because I don't think I could have articulated like that. I mean, that was beautiful. And going to the topic above, right? Cognitive similarities between synthetic and organic systems, as not to anthropomorphize, as I love that you threw that word in there because it is extremely important when, uh, from a psychology perspective of thinking about these things, anthropomorphize really uh, defining a relation of characteristics in which we are putting the same characteristics in ourselves as we think of as Homo sapiens with these synthetic kind of operations that are occurring today. So, it's important to remember the difference in relation to their structures for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's also very important to talk about synthetic slash opposing organic, right? And some of their similarities, but with similarities, you can also then start defining the differences for sure there as well. But we got a couple hands up. Harbinger, you got your hand up. Please jump back in, and then McQuack.
Oh yeah, Umesh, that was a fantastic explanation. Thank you, because that was like right around what I was asking. So a follow up to that, uh, because I never even knew this was like a thing until today, about this drifting and hallucinating. So is this like uh, um, something that's like probably effect that you'd want to eliminate so that it doesn't happen?
I think you cut out there for just a moment, Harbinger.
Oh, sorry, I started my car and it switched to the car. But is the drifting something that's like beneficial for these models, or is it something that you would prefer like they didn't do and you want to correct it immediately when they try to do that?
He may have walked away from the phone, but to my understanding, it was no, it was so from the propagation of the information based off of the relative past references and information and agents that are set up in between to also reference check the information that's being produced before you have access to it. It's all in an effort to make it so that it doesn't come out as a parent or something that it's relative to yourself that you're going to receive this information. Oh, but EG, oh sorry, is back. So please go ahead, man.
Hey, sorry, I literally walked away for a few seconds to grab a glass of water, so really missed what the question was. So if you don't mind repeating question, and I'll try my best to answer if it was directed to me.
Yeah, he just, I think he understood what you were saying better than I did, and he kind of explained it. So this is something that you don't want to get the drifting. You want to kind of eliminate that so it doesn't happen, right?
As I said, there are two cases. So if you're looking for, like, let's say, for example, creative writing, then you want it to drift, because if it doesn't drift, then you don't get the creative writing, right? So you are leveraging both capabilities. You are leveraging capabilities to remain deterministic. If you're, let's say, looking for, let's say, a response on the taxes, let's say, so you want the response to be very deterministic. You don't want it to come back and give you a different tax flow every time. But if you're looking for, let's say, writing an article about a product and you want to publish it in 5 different places. You are not going to publish the same article about your product at 5 different places. You want that to be entirely different, talking about different use cases and everything, so that you address different use cases, you attract different audience. From SEO point of view, it helps you out. So you want the model to really be creative when writing something like that. So those are 2 different cases, and you need a different pipeline for both the cases.
That was such a great point, and it took you have a greater imagination than I would say there, because I didn't even like relatively think about how it would be useful also in some cases. So that was super cool.
Yeah,
And
I'm like mind blown by this. Thank you so much.
yeah, and McQuack, you got your hand up, man. Please feel free to jump in, and then Shellfish, and we'll pop over to Sharon after. Welcome up, Sharon.
You kind of mentioned how Crow was talking about how he doesn't view them as LLMs; he views them as cognitive models. And I was just wondering on Umesh's view on that.
Okay, so he was speaking about he was speaking about specific models, and that had in reference to the way that the access to the information is being set up, particularly in a graph formatted
Oh,
memory segment. So there's multiple operations of where that information is being essentially inputted from, calculated, and put together, and then represented through your agent. But very similar to what EG was saying. EG, if you do want to comment on it, though, please also feel free.
No, I think I'm with you on that. I think you said it actually.
Awesome. And so, Shellfish, you got your hand up. Please feel free to jump back in.
Yeah, Harbinger, one of the techniques I do to lower the hallucinations is um, if I'm trying to figure out a certain subject, I will actually query it and say, can you give me different sources to cite from? Like if I'm looking for a book from Harvard, I say go to the Harvard Library and look into this, or go to MIT and look in their library. I tell it to go directly to the specific location, or I reference specific people in the field. I tell it to slow down, and then another thing is just literally telling it to source whatever it is giving me. Um, when I'm using OpenAI, it's very generalized. And when it's pulling on the different agents that are within its system, it could be a different agent, is from what I understand. So if you have a specific model within OpenAI that you want to utilize that has been trained on specific data, sometimes that's better than just grabbing it from OpenAI's like ChatGPT 4 or whatever. So like I have my model and I know what the information it was trained on, and it's still accessible to GPT-4, but I can go directly to my model, and it seems to be a little bit more accurate, and I don't have to probe it as much because it already has that data. Just like if you were going to go talk to vet or talk to me as the middleman, like trying to get to vet, the information may be a little bit skewed. You'd still get the information eventually, but if you just went directly to the source and said, I'd like to talk to the vet model, he's really knowledgeable on the XRPL, he would be able to give you a better, more accurate, less hallucination than say I would, because I might fill in the blanks, which is a little bit of what the hallucination is to my understanding. Who's that, guys?
Hi, everybody. How you guys doing? Deaf Ranger,
Welcome
I'm
up.
so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here in the space with you. It's been a while. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Shellfish, that's very interesting. But I think, when it comes to really an agent or an LLM to fulfill a task, you don't have you might not have it, you might not prompt it, right? So you do want it to always give a similar output, what Umesh was speaking about. But for us, when we query, when we want to search data and do all that stuff, of course that makes a lot of sense, right? And there are differences with those models. But if you want an LLM to fulfill a task, you don't have the time to do that. You just want it to do the job and do it accurate. So I think that's there's differences, right? It depends on what you're using the LLM for. I wanted to ask, I don't know, Umesh or whoever, the temperature. Now I'm trying to figure out an easier way to get these LLMs to be more accurate in what they do. I don't know if we have to wait until they get more efficient with their infrastructure, but my question is, we do have the possibility to play with temperature, and I'm just wondering if anyone has experience with that. I know that some of these models you don't have that much, it's kind of limited to temperature, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that if anyone has played with that. And also, if there is an easier way to get these models to be more accurate than really putting them in this strict infrastructure with agents that, have rules or what, however it is set up. I don't have the right technical terms for that. Thank you.
Great question, Sharon. Always, as always, because you're building real solutions, so I can see that. Okay, so one technique I'll tell you that I employ when I'm doing like preliminary research and I don't want to spend my time building agents and stuff like that, to understand, is what I call the two-step process. So you go to the most powerful model, like let's say 1.0 or even 4 is fine. Gemini is not good with this, but Anthropic Claude is good with this, where you put your prompt but slightly differently and say, I'm researching this topic, and then you put the topic, and then say, to keep my research focused, what should be the output of my research for this? Okay. And then you use that chat to restructure your prompt where you determine the output that you require. So the structure of the output, I'm not talking about the output per se, I'm talking about the structure of the output. And then that becomes your prompt to the engine, to the model, sorry, whichever model you're using. And there, what you do is, if you're slightly technical, then depending on the model that you're using, either convert that output into a JSON schema or an XML schema. And that also you can ask ChatGPT or Anthropic, or even Gemini does good schema from that. So then you put that information skeleton and say, convert this into a JSON schema. And then in your prompt, you ask whatever model you're using to provide you details in that JSON schema. And you will see an amazing structured output, which will be much better than your text that you get. So this is a very neat, very simple trick that you can use to get the best out of these models.
Oh man, I love that. It goes right hand in hand with I like to coin this age of humanity, or our species, as the age of networking, and part of being able to have an interoperable network and data communication be able to be widespread and exchanged is compression, and the ability to have compressed information still be able to be accessed and have something relevant that can come from it. So what a cool methodology to be able to do something like that.
This is awesome, Umesh, because I have started using this JSON, and it's kind of like you're going backwards with your prompt. You're structuring your prompt going backwards, kind of, and then going forward. I love that. I started using that. JSON it's really powerful, definitely. And it just gives you also more structure of what you want from the LLM. It structures you too. So you're getting more structured with the way you prompt and getting a more structured response. This is super easy to do. And the beauty is that these LLMs can set that schema up for you, so they can make that JSON for you. It's really awesome. Thanks so much, Umesh. So I seem to be on the right path. Thank you.
No worries, and you are on the right path, Sharon. We have discussed that before, and yeah, absolutely. But one thing that I forgot to mention: don't underestimate the temperature. If you wouldn't be able to play with it in ChatGPT or Gemini, but if you're using API, then you can play with temperature as well, and that can also work in your favor. So if you combine these methods, and JSON schema will not always work with all the models, so you need to try out. So initial when you're doing it, my advice is that you get the JSON schema and XML schema, and then do separate calls to same APIs for both and see which one is much more enriched and properly structured for you. So then you will know which model prefers what. Because, for example, Anthropic does really good with XML schema because they had that as a part of their training data set, and that's why they respond very well to XML vis-a-vis. Let's say if you take Gemini, Gemini had some enforced structured schemas, and that's why it responds very well to JSON. So depending on your use case, you should be looking at both basically.
Yeah, you don't get these tips on the everyday street. These are multi-billion-dollar association tips right here. But EG bringing the heat, man. I really appreciate you being in the space today.
Man, I'm just paying back, huh?
Well, there's nothing to pay back, so it goes forward, as I like to say to the community. And some of us we host these spaces, we have conversations all the time, and so many great conversations. I have a different outlook, though. The way that I host my spaces, I look at them from a relevance of 20 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now. I want these audio files to be pieces of how we look at hieroglyphics today as forms of the collectus of association with the societal means of representation of our beliefs at this point of how we think of time, of course. And you know, that's why I really, I love these spaces. I love the conversations that we get to have in here and the people that come in here every day. So I appreciate you guys all, and I hope I really do hope that maybe some of us in the space will be around 1,000 years from now, and we'll be able to look back at these less as audio files of history and more of our past representation of self. But yeah, who knows? Hamza, though, you man, I don't get to see you. Oh, actually, EG got your hand up. Please jump back in, and then Hamza, if you would like to, man, you came up. I'd love to hear you speak, and if you have any questions or anything.
I have a question for you, Death Ranger. You spoke about 2000 years down the line. If you were given a chance to upload your consciousness to an AI, would you do that?
Okay, so
Sorry to put you on the space. I didn't
no,
mean
no,
to.
no. And so it's a very deep rooted question, because I think the representation of the way that the aspect of the nature of that system would uh, be what would probably associate my answer today with a yes or a no. But in most forms, I guess I could answer it this way. At least this is my own personal thing, my thought. Most of us will end up as cybernetic beings. And I say most of us as most of us that are living today and plan on living for at least another 25, 30 years or so, because I believe that life extension will start to take hold at a much significant more rate in 20 or so years from now. And then more questions start to come apparent, because it's like, how long can we actually live for? What happens when cellular information becomes to its max? What is cellular max information? I think there's like some interesting questions there also. But yeah, I would not part with being a cybernetic being. And I think personally, even going towards the more mecha side, it probably is the most efficient means of survival in the universe, at least how we perceive our universe to be from a space standpoint. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it. But yeah, it would have to really depend on the way that that system is articulated, and if I agreed upon its representation, at least with how it's what's relative to me at this moment in time. Was that a sufficient answer?
Wide ranging. I'm going to have some personal discussion with you about this.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting topic. Hamza, though, man, yeah, feel free to jump in. I know you didn't put your hand up, but I don't get to see you in spaces very often.
Hey, Death. Yeah, man, just trying to figure out schedules and make sure I can fit in what I can fit in when I can fit it in. But no, and I'm just, I had my notification kind of come up because when I have the XRPL calendar, right, like it all pops up on my phone too, right? So like oh, okay, I'm actually driving right now, and Death Ranger Space is on. I wonder if he's still hosting these, because I'm not always on, X, are able to do the things when the time comes. So I'm really glad to see you not only still hosting this, but that these conversations continue to be so productive and informative. And I'm so proud of you, man. Like this is great. Um, so I heard you guys talking about kind of prompting for a response in a particular format, and that reminded me of this repo that I came across called Fabric. And I'm not sure if any of y'all have heard of it. This is kind of old news to you. It might very well be, but yeah, it was pretty neat to me. Kind of just being able to see these different sort of prompting templates that people in the AI community have created for various different tasks, right? Whether it's like uh, uh, giving a critique on a piece of creative writing, or for specifically for designing or writing code. Like there's all these different tasks that people have not only used AI for, but also created like a template that they use for their prompts, so that they're able to output in a specific format and really guide the AI into providing for them the output that they want, right? And I could see how this could work very well in conjunction with an agent setup, so that the your secondary agent that is set to interpret the output from the first agent could receive what it needs, in order to correlate it with whatever, just however it's set up, right? So I really like that concept and the idea of getting exactly what you want. I didn't know you could make prompts this long. So that kind of blew my mind a little bit, that's even a thing. But then additionally, there was some discussion about JSON as kind of an output format, which I agree is insanely powerful and really easy to read. Um, I would ask about the whether Markdown is might not also be like a worthwhile format for exploring, like understanding. It all depends on the use case in particular, right? But like, um, I had come across some information that it seemed to indicate that like AI was able to interpret Markdown very well in comparison to just sort of like free form text, because of the structure that it has. Obviously, JSON like takes that to an entirely new level, but I don't know if like having nested subarrays like to kind of contain all of the information that you want, like in various blocks, would really be kind of the ideal output in comparison to Markdown. So if anybody has any input on that, I'd love to hear it.
I may have missed the last part right there, but EG, are you there by any chance? But when it comes to agent setup, I think EG he's a world of knowledge in itself, and he might not be there at the moment. He may have walked away for just a second there. So if he does
Sure.
come back over, I may ask if you could just repeat that last part there, Hamza.
Yeah, sure. But okay, well then, while we wait on the potential eventuality of him returning, so yeah, really really cool kind of stuff going on out there in the world of AI still. And I um I I have heard good things about Claude. I haven't used it too much. I just kind of go with what's easy and I'm used to, being OpenAI. I really like, or rather not necessarily like, I know what to expect at this point from the models that I've used the most, and then they release these new ones, and kind of there's this learning curve of like, okay, well, how does this actually respond? One of the things that they noted in like the release notes for the O1 models is that the input doesn't necessarily need to say things like, take a deep breath or take your time or focus, you know, like that I had heard the Shellfish, you know, saying was, I mean, which in the GPT, you know, 3 and 4 models, like that was helpful, you know, like talk to it like it's a person for some reason, you know, being kind and polite to, I just naturally say thank you to my AI model, to my LLM. I don't know if that's weird, but I see your message back. So, yeah, I don't know. Did you get a chance to kind of hear my question regarding JSON versus Markdown formatting mesh, or do I need to repeat it?
If you can, please, because the thing is that I'm trying to solve a very critical issue with an agent that I have that I've been building for last few days, and I'm finally reaching kind of a last stage. So that's why I just turned the volume down to just focus because I had some thought in my mind while talking, and I wanted to just implement it straight away. So yeah, if you can repeat, that would be great.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I mean, kudos to you for building on that, and all the best of luck to you for getting that issue resolved. My question was specifically regarding um, the output formats for passing to, you know, a secondary agent or a secondary LLM to then interpret. Uh, Given that, yeah, while JSON is extremely readable, I don't know if necessarily like setting it up like whatever template it would be um, in your original, I guess, script or prompt to pass to that secondary LLM, if that would be like as good as Markdown or better. I had never, I guess, come across people using JSON or requesting JSON for output. I was under the impression that like Markdown was kind of the ideal for LLMs to interact with.
My experience has been contrary, actually, to tell you very honestly. And please don't steal my word, but I'm disclosing it for the first time. So I'm writing a paper about it, and I'm calling it CISO. So structured in, structured out, basically. So you heard it for the first time in this space. It's SISO framework, where you put a structured input into the model and you get a structured output from the model. So that means that your agent will communicate with the model using a structured input. And if you have tested, so something that I spoke about before in the previous question, if you have tested the model and you found that the model responds very well to XML, then you will use the XML. If it is JSON, you'll use JSON. If you, let's say, I don't prefer Markdown, but let's say you found that Markdown works for your purpose, then you will use Markdown. But that means that you will communicate with the model in Markdown format. So your prompt will also go in Markdown format, and your output will also come in Markdown format. And what will happen is that as you start, let's say, if your JSON has a multi-turn interaction with the model, as you know, in API, you have to put the entire chat context. So that means that your context will contain all the markdown formats. So the model will put into that framework right from your first prompt itself. So your first instructions itself will go in markdown, to the extent that even system instruction we try to, so what you call the system prompt, we put in the appropriate format. So if you're using JSON, then we'll put even the system prompt in JSON format, and then we'll send it to the model. And just one caveat, the caveat is that it depends on what you're expecting the model to do. So if you're looking for the, let's say, on a deterministic level, you're looking at a more deterministic leaning output, then CISO framework is great. If you're looking for more creative output, then you can still use CISO framework, because that will give you really good output. But what you have to have, what you call the light framework. So that means that you shouldn't put too many tags into that. It should be very simple. So I'll give you another tip, which you'll not find anywhere on the internet, fortunately, because this is our internal technique. So one thing you can do, and this you can do even with ChatGPT and Gemini and Anthropic or Perplexity, whichever interface you're using. So if you're not using API, because not all people are using API, What you can do is you can ask the model to respond to you using HTML tag, but only use the P tag and the B tag. So P tag is basically, if you don't know HTML, is for paragraph. So you have P open, P close tag. And B tag is for putting the text in bold. So when you see text in bold on any web page, usually it's a B tag. It's not being used anymore because you have CSS and everything. But B tag is to highlight something basically. So then what will happen is that because all the models have seen so many HTML text because they've been trained on this, P and B tag are one of the most prevalent besides the div and table tag in the data set on which these models are trained. So they understand those two tags like we understand that our reflexes basically that you don't touch a hot thing and otherwise you throw it. So it's like the back of their hand kind of thing. So they are very, very good with that. And once you ask the model to use P tag and B tag, it will understand that you want to highlight important points that they will put in B tag. So that's B for Bravo. And you want the output to be structured. So it will use the P tag. So that's one of the most effective way without any kind of prompt engineering or anything, you can get this done.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I totally get where you're coming from regarding it all comes down to what is the model trained on, what does it expect, what is the data that it has in its data set, as far as what input you pass to it. Right? If a model was specifically trained on or majority JSON, then yeah, JSON would be great for that versus something that's trained on XML or something else. So that makes sense. Thank you for that. That's a great take, and thank you for the tips. Got the alpha.
That really
Let's
was.
go.
He's just dropping bombs today. I mean, just all day he has been just dropping worlds of knowledge, and I couldn't appreciate you more, EG, for being in the space. I know I've said it 3,000 times already, but 3,000 more coming. We got Aska. Welcome to the space. I haven't seen you before, but I'm going to wrap up in the next couple minutes. So I wanted to make sure everybody who was up here got a chance to speak. And anybody in the audience who hasn't, if you guys want to hit the request and come up, if you have any questions or any comments you guys want to give before the end of the space, please feel free to hit the request now. But Aska, please jump ahead.
Death Rager, sure, thanks for letting me up on stage. The reason I came into the space is because I noticed the title, Cognitive Similarities, Synthetic Organic. Just happened to match up with something I've been noodling with for the past 24 hours, regarding trying to test for, sentience in an LLM. That seems to be a topic I've witnessed lately, is people, claiming that the behaviors of agentic system or an LLM is demonstrating sentience, which I don't think is really provable in any trivial way. I think it's a difficult problem to solve. So I'm trying to determine if there's a way to test to see if synthetic consciousness, intelligence, synthetic intelligence is self-aware.
I love it, and it's so interesting because of all of the terms we use, right? Language being the means of expression through manifestation, which you and I can articulate some sort of relevance to each other. It's like intelligence, right? Well, what is intelligence? To me, intelligence is you know a physical action of representation that has some sort of relevance to me that makes sense, that I can say that makes a lot of sense. A highly advanced being, something like a hyper intelligent being, its form of intelligence might be so profoundly conceptually different than what we would think of to be intelligence, that it would look at us as something like a chair, right? And so it's like really interesting when you think about the term intelligence itself and sentience, right? Like everyone has a different opinion on sentience or emotional capacity. How could I ever prove that you are emotionally charged in a specific way in representation to our conversation and what's being represented back and forth. Yeah, I would never be able to prove that. And so, how would I be able to prove that in any sort of system? And so that's so one of the things I try to stay away from some of those terms. Of course, I put Gen AI in the title, which I think AI or artificial intelligence, be it a horrific, vast, overwhelming term for the amount of different tool sets that we have being actually acted upon today. But less into that, I like to think about it from a cognitive standpoint because when we think of reality in itself and in reference to something like the cosmic brain, we, be it ourselves, part of a much larger, vast array of systems that have a systemic operational causal effect from the previous states of their interactions. And so, when you think about all action being in relevance to some sort of causal effect that has premeditated itself in action, I think of cognition being relevant in all of these different little aspects of systems that are being articulated all around us in all of these different ways, and not necessarily in particular in large language models, but I think even the physicality of what occurs on microchips and the distribution of electromagnetic frequencies and signals and similarities to the way that these vibrations and frequencies are articulated inside of our organic matter. There's a lot of like relevant similarities there, and so I try to focus more on from a similarity standpoint that kind of aspect, less about the intelligence and sentience, because I do agree with you, it's an extremely hard conversation to have. That was a lot of information there, I'm sorry. Yeah, sometimes my brain is just, I think it moves faster than my mouth is able to keep up with. But this has been a awesome conversation. EG, you were the star of this conversation. It wouldn't have been what it was if it wasn't for you, and of course everyone who came out to speak and who came as a listener today. I hope you guys really enjoyed it as much as I know I did. If there's any last minute thoughts from anybody on the speaker panel, please feel free to jump in right now, and we'll probably close up in the next couple minutes.
I'll just say thank you for an amazing space, and I really like the idea of drifting rather than hallucinating. So, and apologies I wasn't able to contribute a little bit more, but I gained a lot from this. So yeah, good space, man.
No, thank you, Dazzling. And I am so happy you actually brought that up because it was something that I didn't get a chance to comment on because the conversation kept evolving. But I really did like that, the way that it really does change the anthropomorphization of the thought of large language models when you use that term, right? Drifting rather than hallucination. So I think it's important, and I'm going to start using that terminology also. Sorry, EG, if I stole that kind of there from you, but I think it's a better way to describe the interaction of this exchange of information that would be occurring on a large language model set system rather than what actually occurs in our brains from a hallucination. So yeah, I love that. And thank you, Dazzling, for coming today, man. All right, actually, Vet, you're still up here, man. You haven't gotten a chance to speak today. I'm actually sorry that my friend here. If you would like to jump in though at the last moment, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the space. You there, Vet?
He's hallucinating.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
He's fixing nodes.
Yeah. All right. It's all right though. But I love you guys. I hope everyone has a great rest of the night. And we will probably not be back for another space this week. I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving in the United States. And look forward to seeing everyone for a space next week, Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I will definitely be around in other people's spaces. So hopefully see you guys pretty soon. Night, everyone.
It's how they assume. It's how they assume lies.